Good afternoon. In the following session, you will hear a lot about placemaking and how it creates vibrant neighborhoods. Placemaking is a term that began to be used in the 1970s by architects and planners to describe the process of creating attractive, distinctive, and vibrant public places, neighborhoods, and cities. Today's topic of creating vibrant communities through the arts truly hits home for me, and I consider it a great privilege to share the stage with my colleagues. Investing in communities and ensuring space for creativity, commerce, and culture lies at the heart of Trishama's work. This is a vision I know I share with the Municipal Art Society, advocates such as MAS, today's panelist, and I believe in the power of the arts to bring about new ways of problem solving. We believe that strongly. Finely woven fabric of successful and vibrant communities depend on the ecosystems of business, thoughtful design, and mixed-use buildings, all with the dash of that secret ingredient, the arts. Today, we are joined by Patricia Cruz, the Executive Director of Harlem Stage, our moderator for this discussion and panelist, Nicholas Baume, Director and Chief Curator of the Public Art Fund, Katie Dixon, Director of Special Projects of the Brooklyn Academy of Music, and Elizabeth Streb, founder of Streb and the Evel Knievel of Dance. And to kick off our conversation on vibrancy in the neighborhood is a man who has long been a great friend and a leader in the arts to us in New York. A professor, a producer, former Mass board member, would you please welcome to the stage, Summit Podium, the chairman of the National Endowment of the Arts, Rocco Landesman.
Thanks for that intro, Anita. And I want to add a special thanks to Vin Cipolla, Vin, my old pal, Jeannie, for inviting me back. As a former board member, MAS has a special place in my heart. I always feel when I'm among you, I'm home again, and it's a nice feeling. I always feel like something of an imposter when I'm asked to speak in settings like this. Anita, you and the panelists who will be coming up here in a little bit are the ones who have really been walking the walk long before I got to the NEA and started talking the talk. But over the past 3 years at the endowment, I've seen something happen that I do not think has happened before. I've seen a community of practice come together under the heading creative placemaking. This is suddenly, and very quickly, and before we knew it, a field. It's something that now is starting to be taught in universities, starting to be the agenda of foundations. It's something that really has taken hold in a new and very exciting way. What is creative placemaking? That is simply the term we use to describe the ways that cities and towns all across this country are using the arts to help shape their social, physical, and economic characters. Whether you're talking about a theater in Harlem, a cultural district in downtown Brooklyn, a trapeze studio in Williamsburg, or an installation on Columbus Circle, places literally change when you bring the arts to the center of them. And I should add parenthetically that I think the arts also change for the better when you bring the community into the center of them. But we can save that for another conversation. Arts shape place. Mark Stern and Susan Seifert, in a study that I point to all the time at the NEA over these last 3.5 years or so, at the University of Pennsylvania, have looked longitudinally at Philadelphia and Baltimore over a period of 10 years. They studied communities that had an arts presence against very similar communities that didn't, and discovered that social cohesion, child welfare, and economic prosperity all increase as you have an arts presence. The Knight Foundation worked with Gallup to drill down into community attachment. They asked people, what is it about your community that you like, that makes you want to stay there, that gives you a positive feeling about it? And you would expect the answers would be, access to good education, jobs, health care, et cetera, et cetera. That's not what they said at all. The three most prominent things that they listed about what draw them to a place are social offerings, openness, and aesthetics. In other words, the arts. The anecdotal evidence is seemingly limitless. And it doesn't just happen in New York City. Look at North Adams, Massachusetts, Marfa, Texas, Memphis, Tennessee, Paducah, Kentucky. I can give you my hometown of St. Louis, Cincinnati. I can give you 100 examples where this is so obviously true. I sometimes refer to it as stupidly obviously true. Mayor Bloomberg has been an incredible proponent of this work, without a doubt. So is Mayor Daley in Chicago, Mayor Riley in Charleston, South Carolina. There's an increasingly prominent list of mayors who are engaged on this subject. The arts flourish when they are supported by local elected leaders, which is why at the NEA we've partnered with the U.S. Conference of Mayors and the American Architectural Foundation to run the Mayor's Institute of City Design. For 25 years, MICD, which is how we refer to it, has been working with mayors to help them reconceive of themselves as their city's chief urban designers. Mayors make design decisions every time a building, a road, or a park is approved. We want to give them the resources they need to make sure those decisions are good ones. You know, when people say that the arts are for a few, that they're elitist, that they don't touch people's lives, that they're something extra or special, all you have to do is point to all the examples of public art that people run into every day: architecture, public sculpture, aesthetic design, good design in cities. These are ways people connect with the arts, who will never buy a ticket to a theater or a ballet or an opera or a museum, but they engage with the public aspect of art through these through these arts very, very constantly. Landscape architecture we were talking about in the previous panel. That's certainly an art, and it's one that engages a very, very broad section of the public. So anyway, it was through MICD that we commissioned what really was our urtext, our manifesto, a white paper on creative placemaking from Ann Markison and Ann Godwa. We had the anecdotal evidence, but we did not have a formal study and research into the specific effects that the arts have in building stronger communities. We also didn't have an explicit way that arts organizations and communities could apply to the NEA for support for this work. Even though, of course, the NEA had been funding this kind of work as far back as 1967, when we helped bring an Alexander Calder sculpture to the center of downtown Grand Rapids, Michigan. So we created a fund in honor of the 25th anniversary of MICD that became a sort of pilot program for our town, which was the NEA's new signature funding stream for communities that create public-private partnerships led by and strengthening the arts, while at the same time shaping the social, physical, and economic characters of neighborhoods, towns, cities, and regions. Why is it called Our Town? I'm a theater guy. One of the few things I get to do at the NEA is name things. So we call it Our Town. New York was one of our pilot grantees. We provided a grant to the Hudson Yards Development Corporation to develop the plans for Culture Shed, a collaborative effort by the leading architectural firms Diller, Scofidio, and Renfro, and the Rockwell Group. Culture Shed is a 5-story building with 2 outer sheds that can be rolled out to create an exhibition hall of more than 55,000 square feet. The new building will serve as a cultural anchor for the Hudson Yards redevelopment. We also provided funding to place artists in residencies at senior centers in all 5 boroughs. The artists received studio space in exchange for creating programming for senior centers and opportunities for interaction with the broader community. This was a partnership between the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs and the Department for the Aging. Our town fundamentally supports collaborations exactly like this. We require that applicants be from partnerships that include, at a minimum, an arts design organization and local government. The first round of our town projects are currently underway, and we've publicly shared the first draft of the framework we will use to understand their impacts. We believe that creative placemaking will have a positive effect in at least 4 areas: on the arts community itself, on community attachment, on quality of life, and on local economies. We've recently announced that we will be working in partnership with the Urban Institute in fleshing these out. The Urban Institute has put together a team of researchers who will work with us to test a set of indicators that will measure improvements in these 4 areas. I believe that Carol Coletta, who runs Art Place, is also here today. For those of you who don't know, Art Place is a consortium that was formed with the major arts funding foundations in this country, which are also the main foundations, and she's producing a set of indicators that are specially linked with vibrancy, which she defines as the changes to people activity and value in a community. When that beeps, does that mean I should be wrapping it up faster? I guess it does, okay. Well, I think I only have one more page. But as a layperson, I simply know that artists and places are inextricably linked. There's a reason that most artists' bios begin with so-and-so lives and works in such and such a place. And I've also seen what the arts can do in changing the patterns of foot traffic in who comes to a neighborhood. And I've seen what the arts can do in a rural setting to bring people together, serving as a kind of metaphorical campfire around which people can gather. And this brings me to the point when I should turn things over to the real experts in this work, the people who have devoted their professional lives to creating more vibrant, more livable places through the arts. Please join me in welcoming Pat Cruz from Harlem Stage, who will serve as our moderator, along, well, Karen Hopkins is not here, right? Someone is substituting for her? Okay. Katie Dixon, okay. Nicholas Baume from the Public Art Fund, and Elizabeth Streb from SLAM. Thanks so much.
Huh? Yeah. Yes, because Elizabeth is going to be last. I will wait 2 seconds for Elizabeth to be seated because we don't have much more time than that. I just want to say how pleased I am and we are to be here because I think all of us have believed that New York is a vibrant place because of the arts. And I think many of us have come here with that in mind. I want to, as the moderator, I have been asked to set the foundation for our discussion by talking about my own institution, Harlem Stage, and by using that as an example of how we feel that we have contributed to the vibrancy of an already vibrant community, Harlem. I am also, I thought it would be important for me to give you some background of who I am and how I got here, because I think that's important, because I think we've all come to this place for similar reasons. When I came to New York City during the last century, I was attracted to its vibrancy. I came because it was a cultural hub, an artistic mecca, at once a vast neighborhood of many parts, and at the same time, a microcosm of the world. The diversity of the place was palpable. Is there an odd image up there? Oh, I see people looking at the screen, so I don't know what's going on. Okay, sorry. At once, a microcosm of the world. The diversity of this place was palpable. Rich, poor, black, brown, beige, white, all coming together. It was a center of both competition and cooperation. It was a wonderland for a 19-year-old, rebellious, romantic, like myself, with artistic aspirations. I have changed. I'm no longer 19. And so is the city. The divisions between wealth and poverty, between ethnic groups, are all deeper and more separated than ever before, and I think we are poorer as a result of that. I used to walk between stately mansions, towering housing projects, and the tenement buildings that I lived in on the Lower East Side, all within a 4-block radius. I got to see people of every part of this society together. I could be empathetic with them, I could be envious of them, I could be a part of them. I don't know if that is any longer the case. But what I do know, and what I do believe absolutely, is that art and culture is a value that we all share. So no matter what our background, no matter what our economic status, we know that we are enriched by art. It is a part of who we are. I wanted to speak about Harlem Stage, of course, because we are an example of an organization that has contributed to the vibrancy. Now, I'm supposed to click this pickle. I don't know if you all know what a pickle is. I didn't. But I'm going to click it and see what happens. Nothing. Okay. Okay, good. There are images of Harlem Stage. We had, in 2001, we had a visioning session in which we brought, against my objections, to the public, artists, students, people who lived in the community, to tell us what they wanted to do with the building that you see at the very top that had been abandoned and sat derelict for many decades. I didn't want to know what they thought because they might think something opposite of what I thought and wanted. But we invited them anyway, and they actually wanted wonderful things. They came in numbers that exceeded our expectation or capacity. They wanted safety for their children. They wanted well-equipped playgrounds. They wanted places to perform and share their ideas, and it is still a work in progress. With the help of partners like Take the Field and Parks Department and PS 161, we provided the only athletic field in the city for a primary school. With the partnership with the city and the Department of Cultural Affairs, we transformed a derelict 19th century landmark gatehouse into a vibrant home for the creation of works of art by artists of color to realize their vision, share their creativity and their imagination with 10,000 school children, residents, and visitors from as far away as Brooklyn and as far away as Japan. And now that building is, am I pointing it in the right direction? It's not going anywhere.
It is.
Oh, there it is. You can see the derelict building next to the building that we have restored. Let me just say that Harlem has been vibrant for the last century. And for the last 30 years, we have contributed to that vibrancy. Together, we are pulsating. Nicholas, you get to take this pickle and talk.
Great. Thank you so much, Pat. Let's see if we can up. So, okay, there we go. I thought that what I would like to do in the sort of brief time that we have for the panel discussion, show a couple of recent examples of public art fund projects that I think are germane to this idea of vibrancy in the city, particularly as they relate, as I think Pat has sort of framed the conversation, to the collective experience that we have of our culture. So a kind of before and after shot here. I wanted to show a site at the corner of Broadway and 17th Street, a very familiar one to New Yorkers, the northern end of Union Square. So kind of on one side of the screen, you see that site after having been sort of reclaimed from the road when the Department of Transportation created a sort of a new location, giving that back to pedestrian use. And you see some of those familiar planters, some chairs, umbrellas that sort of have become very familiar with these locations. Rob Pruitt, wonderful New York-based contemporary artist, had the idea to create a monument to Andy Warhol. And my own feeling is that the placement in that location of the Andy monument turned it into a place. It was no longer okay, I'll meet you at the corner, the northeast corner of Broadway and 17th Street. It's, I'll meet you at the Andy statue, or let's get together, meet at Andy Warhol. To me, I think this was a great example of course, a contemporary artwork being successful because it was a really interesting reinvention of a very classical mode, the statue of the celebrated figure on a pedestal, but of course in a very whimsical way with its shiny chrome surface. But what I think was also very profound about it was that it really animated the collective history, the collective memory of the city by placing this sculpture in relationship to this location, Union Square, where Andy Warhol and the factory and his collaborators had really reinvented the way we make art and culture and think about them. Then the next example I want to share with you briefly is the one that we're sort of standing and sitting right next to. Again, you see kind of before and after shots. The column itself, the monument as it sort of is normally, and then Tatsunishi's transformation with discovering Columbus. Now, this, of course, is a very different example because Columbus Circle is already a vibrant place. It's not just a location, it's one of the most prominent sites in New York City. So what the artist has done here is not really turn it into a place, but enabled us to have a completely new experience, a new relationship, really, to that monument, which I think was very exciting. I think, of course, by their nature, even sites which are very prominent and very established can become so familiar that we no longer really see them. And I think this is a case where a very established monument has been given sort of new life and new excitement by this project. And I think that's one thing that temporary public art projects can do very effectively, really allowing us to see something in a completely new way. I guess the point then maybe to sort of close and draw some comparison between these two different projects is that I think they're both collective experiences. They're both public art experiences that we share with our friends and other people who are experiencing it. But they are both the vision of one single artist. It's the imagination of one artist that has come up with this idea and that we've been able to bring to fruition. So I guess what I want to emphasize again is that in order to do projects like this, we really need to give artists the freedom to experiment and to innovate. And I think, our job is to get out of the way sometimes. And this is why I think temporary public art projects are so key, because the stakes are lower in a sense. It's not going to be there forever. We can afford to take some risks, be bold, be innovative. And then I think our job is really just to help the artists make it happen.
Thank you, Nicholas. We're going to turn it over to Katie so she can talk to us about BAM.
Great. Karen Brooks Hopkins is sorry that she could not be here today, but pleased to be on this panel and also to echo your thoughts, Nicholas, about the public realm and about artists having a voice and also temporary projects that allow you to experiment with things that you might not be able to get away with otherwise. At BAM, we are pretty well known for what we do on our stages. We've opened our newest facility, the BAM Richard B. Fisher building, just over a month ago. So we now have 3 buildings stretched over 3 city blocks with 6 different venues, all in the Fort Greene neighborhood of Brooklyn, just off Flatbush Avenue. We're working on our plans for our next expansion project. So in terms of vibrancy and what the arts add to a neighborhood, we have really experienced the way having such a dynamic physical presence can affect a place. And we bring almost 700,000 people a year into the neighborhood. When all of our venues are running at the same time, as they will be for the first time tonight, the Richard B. Fisher Building with the Harvey Theater and the Opera House all have shows, along with our cinemas. We'll have approximately 4,000 people attending performances at Baume. But I'm going to talk to you, the slides that I'm showing you today demonstrate some of the work that we've been doing to bring all of the activity and art that's happening on the inside of our buildings, out of doors onto the street to interact in a more meaningful way with our community and with the neighborhood. This year, we inaugurated an outdoor art program that activates underutilized space, such as this empty lot next to the Harvey on Fulton Street. Talk about places that you go by every day and see in one way and don't notice. The placement of this sculpture in that empty lot has really transformed the way people interact with that block. We also turned the facade of the Harvey into a canvas that, especially this summer while the theater was dark and under renovation, created an exciting spectacle on the street. I think you can see in the windows, there's an image of a sunset that goes all the way up the entire height of the building. Then I need the pickle. So this next slide shows you the Baume Sharp building, and it has new bike racks designed for Baume by the musician David Byrne outside. This is a great example of a temporary installation that allows you to experiment with something that could typically take a very long time, like bike racks. Our audience loves to bike to Baume, and these racks have increased our parking capacity. They've been a huge hit. David composed a system of elements, an angle, a straight, and a half circle that allow you to make letters, only some letters. So we have a special David Byrne alphabet, and then with that alphabet you can spell words. David picked the first set of words that we have out on the street. And we will now take suggestions from our audience and from the community on what we should spell next. So it's a brand new way for Baume to work with artists, giving them a new platform, as well as to engage with our audience and be a part of the streetscape in a different way. In the distance, there was a mural painted on the Mark Morris building. That's an example of how others are attracted to what we're doing and want to be a part of it. Barry McGee is the artist. You can see it just in the distance there. It's sponsored by Vanity Fair and Cadillac, and they wanted to be a part of all of the things that are going on in the cultural district. And that has also majorly transformed the sense of place in the area.
Thank you, Katie. I think we'd like to pass the pickle to Elizabeth Streb, who has done amazing work in Brooklyn. Elizabeth, we're allowing each participant to speak about their work so that you can hear that. So Elizabeth, take it away.
Hi everyone. Well, creative placemaking, I want to let you all know that you're invited to SLAM, which stands for Streb, that's me, Lab for Action Invention, and it has its 10th year anniversary this January. And it's based on the premise that I had been operating as an artist in Manhattan in Soho, a loft I got in the late 70s when you had to do a lot of illegal things to squat on property. And I was asking someone, well, do you think illegality always precedes gentrification? Like, watch where the muskrats kind of hibernate and breed. There was no answer to that question. But after that, I felt I had culled my action invention, extreme action invention, which is my sort of calling card, to a point where I could put it back on the street, go to Williamsburg. I found this huge, gorgeous garage, and I thought, well, what is relevant about this action form, this extreme action form? And my notion was to just slop it, after I raised a few $100,000, to just slop it down on the street to see if the unknown passersby, not the elite, already converted art goers that knew Streb from Manhattan perhaps, but people who really just were walking by the building that might really wonder what's going on in there. And our experiment had to do with me putting in a particular three-parted manner, 3 extreme action forms. 1, Streb; 2, kids action, which I deeply believe is the most extreme form of action. And my idea was to steal their moves. And then 3, circus arts, and to question the idea of private and public. The origin of my money, I ascertained, comes from the public. Why are my operations, as I often claim in the art world, they are privatized? The only time the public's invited in is when you have to pay, let's say, $25 to $150 to see. That's not really, that's beautiful market economy, that's enterprise, but it's not public. So we decided to make it all public all the time. And we also decided to have a multiple number of things happening at once to increase earned income, to diversify earned income. And my goal was to have a hunk of cash at the end of every day. And I have to say that nothing has made me filled with more glee than that wad of cash in my grubby little hand. And that we would become perhaps not plaintiffs, but partners with everybody else. I think that the idea of creative placemaking has to do with the audience sovereignty. And when I go into a theater and realize there's this sort of clandestine set of principles that the audience can't leave the stuff of life at the door. You can't eat, drink, I can't bring my coffee in here, I'm so upset. You have to behave, the lights go out, you can't use your phones. What a perfect marketing idea to turn your phone on YouTube, everything that's going on stage, you know. And so a lot of the mythological behavior patterns that we do both on this side of the stage and on the other side, in my mind, we have questioned them again and again and tried to unpack them. And so the behavior of the audiences at Slam is basically whatever the heck they want to do, they do. Walk in, walk out, questioning duration. So please come to Slam. You can come watch us rehearse. You can come watch people fly. You can bring your sandwich there. Turn your back to us. Ignore us. If you feel like ignoring someone on a certain day, come ignore us, and I'll make it very hard for you to ignore me. Lastly, this is Streb was commissioned by the Mayor's Office and the London Olympic Committee during the cultural. That's us on the spokes of the London Eye. So to be part of the Cultural Olympiad, it took 2 years to plan. But essentially, you can see some of the events happening there. I had to close the river. No, just the way you had to engage in conversations with people you would never have tried to convince of anything before. The engineers on the London Eye, I said, I'm going to do a ballet on the spokes, you know, it's going to be turning, and what do you think? I drew a sketch. He goes, yeah, that seems reasonable. But because we pierced the skyline, with these small, the question was scale, because this is the diameter on the London Eye is 400 feet. And would the miniaturization of the human form end up maintaining any significance whatsoever, because they were in a place that no one had ever been, no physical being had ever been before. And the notion of content and meaning, and the notion that the relevance of that body wasn't about, in dance as it often is, what were they doing? What fancy moves were they doing? But it completely transferred radically to where we were.
Thank you, Elizabeth. That beep means we'll have to find the answers later. We had each been asked, and I want to take 2 seconds to do it, to identify an organization that we admire for bringing vibrancy to communities, and I want to take 2 seconds to do that. Mine is Jazzmobile, bringing music to communities throughout the 5 boroughs for over 48 years. Jazz. Nicholas.
Okay, I would say Germany. Yes, the country. Having just come back from Documenta in Kassel, I mean, talk about placemaking. Who would have ever known anything about Kassel if they didn't have this incredible contemporary art festival there? And just the way that country puts resources into their contemporary culture, I think, is extraordinary.
Great. I think that's not in New York City, right?
Was that the parameter?
I'm teasing you.
Well, I'm going not in New York City as well. Pittsburgh Cultural Trust.
Okay.
Big example.
Elizabeth.
No.
Oh, you remember?
I'm just ruined for the theater from now on. I just feel like I can't just sit there in the dark anymore. The Globe in London,
Okay.
the Groundlings. They can do whatever they want and throw tomatoes and everything.
Okay. Thank you all. Thank you.